Learn to sew with a Thrifty stitcher, sewing producer for the Great British Sewing Bee.
Hi, welcome to the first piggyback Periscope that me and Ghani from Guthrie Ghani are going to do. So this is, yay, it works! I printed it out in reverse. This is a handle for Guthrie Ghani. So I'm going to do the first little video and introduce our topic today, which is bias binding. It's something that a lot of home sewers struggle with, so we thought we would do it as a little kind of demo. And then Lauren from Guthrie Ghani is going to do another little video, show you how you can make your own, and then I'm going to come back and show you another little application, so a common way of using bias binding, and then Lauren is going to do a fourth one. So we're going to piggyback back and forth, and we'll help you find all the comments. So I'm just going to just tilt my camera a little bit, just because I'm in a strange frame. Hi, thanks for the hearts, that's brilliant. So, hope you guys can't see what I've got on the table. So, first of all, I am going to tell you who I am while I fiddle with my tripod. I'm Claire Louise Hardy. Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. I'm Claire Louise Hardy, the Thrifty Stitcher, and I teach sewing in North London, actually in Stoke Newington, which is a fantastic creative space, so I think you should be able to see pretty much everything I've got in here. So I'm really lucky to have a really great big light sewing studio, which I love, and I teach mostly beginners how to sew. I blog at thethriftystitcher.co.uk, and my piggyback chum, who is Lauren, is someone that I met as part of my job working on the Great British Sewing Bee, and she was in series 1 of the Great British Sewing Bee, and she went all the way through to the final. I was really rooting for her, and hi Lauren. Yeah, I was really rooting for Lauren, and she did amazingly well. Anyway, she now has her own fantastic sewing emporium in London, and you can check out her website. I don't have a shop, but Lauren does, and she sells lots of amazing things at Guthrie and Ghani. She also blogs, so you can get loads of tips and tutorials if you're interested in sewing from Lauren at Guthrie Ghani. So, I'm going to start talking to you about bias binding. Anyone ever use bias binding? So we never know who's watching or what people are interested in. If you're here and you're not interested in sewing, I'm really sorry. I'm just going to be talking about sewing, and so is Lauren. So the thing with bias binding is it's really useful for finishing clothes, and it's useful for decorative techniques as well. So the neckline on this top, which is why I'm wearing it, it's a double layer top, and it's actually lace with a kind of satin underneath. So there's 2 separate layers, and a really clean way, hi Julie, nice to see you, a really clean way of finishing this is to apply a bias binding, and I've turned it all the way to the inside. So I'm just going to show you, because obviously I don't want to lean in too close, might show something I don't really want to. So this is a dress that I've also finished the same way, and it's a cotton summer dress, and can you see how I've turned the binding all the way from the outside to the inside, and this gives it a really clean finish, and for something like a summer dress it makes the edges really light, so it doesn't add too much extra fabric, so it's a really great way of finishing like this. Now another application is one I prepared earlier. So this is actually a faux leather bias binding, and this time instead of turning it all the way inside, I've used it so that you can see the bias on either side. So this is often used in kind of craft projects, but it's a great way, again, I know it's cool skirt, isn't it? I just need to be able to fit back into it. It's a great way of sort of finishing off an edge, particularly this is a line skirt where there's 2 layers, and using it as a kind of decorative detail. So that's why I used the faux leather bias binding. Now a little tip, if you've never used bias, don't use faux leather for your first project because it's a little bit tricky. So what is bias binding? So all it is fabric that's been cut on the bias and then pressed so that the edges fold inside, and it gives you some really nice sewing lines. Now you can buy it pre-made, but before I show you some of that, I'm just going to talk to you about the bias. So let me see if I can do this. So this is a piece of cloth. Now this is a selvage, and along the selvage, thanks for the hearts, it has no stretch. Can you see that? It's really, really taut, so there's no stretch at all. And that's called the straight of grain. And then along the horizontal plane, which is called the cross grain, there's pretty much no stretch. So can't really, there's a tiny bit more stretch, but there's not an awful lot of stretch. Now, if I was to fold this 45 degrees to the selvage or the straight of grain, and then pull along there, oh, can you see how that's really stretchy? So essentially this is what bias is. It means cut along at 45 degrees to the straight of grain, and it allows for some stretch. So, you know, you recognise 1930s dresses that really mould around the body. They don't suit everyone, by the way, even though Monsoon tells you that they do. So this is what the bias grain is. So bias binding is straight strips that have been cut along the bias edge that you can then manipulate into a binding. So, hi there, Scavenger Annie, nice to see you here. We're just talking about bias binding, so I've talked about the bias grain. So then the next thing I'm going to show you is something that I often use bias binding for, is altering garments. Hello, thanks for joining. I made this dress for a show. It was for a Crate and Craft show, and it was a sample straight out of the packet. Just happened that it was close enough to my sizes that I could wear it, but the neckline is too high for me. So because I'm rather a lazy seamstress, hi Guthrie, oh, you're sharing, cool. So I'm going to use some bias binding and basically kind of use it to redraw a V neckline. So this is a great way of finishing a garment that's already constructed that you want to alter. So I'm just going to, I would make a little mitre, and then I would pin all of this on, stitch it, and then cut down my neckline. So it's a really easy way of taking a round neck that maybe is not so flattering and making a V-neck. And I use bias binding all the time in alterations. So these, I'm going to show you two types of bias binding. Now, I unfortunately could only find one width in my studio. This is a satin. Can you see it's shiny? And it's flat on one side, and when you turn it over, you can see that it's got two little pressed folded edges. So it's basically a piece of fabric that stretches along the bias that's been folded inwards like this. Now the satin one is quite useful for heavy fabrics. I use that if I'm altering coats and things like that, but it can be a bit heavy. The one that I use the most, so this isn't the best colour I'm afraid, this is the white. It comes in lots and lots of different colours. This is a kind of, I guess this is like a ½ inch. I often use a really narrow one when I'm finishing off necklines, but you can buy it in all different kinds of widths, and you can make your own. So this one is a prim one, and it's kind of soft. There are a few products on the market that are actually quite hard and like really stiff, and I don't like those in my clothes. So again, if you have a look inside, you can see two little creases where the edges have been folded in. So how do you fold these edges? You could do it by positioning it on an ironing board and working it all out, or my friend Lauren, do you find the polycotton ones are usually softer? Maybe these are polycotton. Anyway, but there's one brand that's heavily dressed, and I try and avoid them because it feels really, really stiff. So my friend Guthrie Ghani, who is Lauren, is going to show you how to use a little gadget that folds over these edges and makes making bias binding really, really easy. So I'm going to let you into a little secret. When the first series of the Sewing Bee aired, Lauren used one of these on screen, and it was such a hit. It is really cool, but it was such a hit that the manufacturers had to do a rerun of the bias binder maker because they sold out in the UK. How amazing is that? Just from Lauren using it on a BBC Two show about sewing called The Great British Sewing Bee, they sold out of the bias binder maker in the UK, and it's still a best-selling item. Still waiting for royalties. I think you'll be waiting a long, long time. They are a great gadget, and they're one of my favourite gadgets, and I've got them in a few different sizes. So I'm going to sign off in a minute, and what I'd like you to do is to hop on over to Guthrie Ghani, which is Lauren over in Birmingham, and she is going to be broadcasting in about 5 minutes how to use a bias binder maker. So she's going to show you how to cut it out. Yeah, that's you. She's going to show you how to cut it out, and then she's also going to show you how to press all the creases in. So it's super easy to use, and once you watch Lauren, you will be amazed that you've never tried this gadget. So Guthrie Ghani, hop on over to our piggyback Periscope, which we're doing this afternoon. Thanks for joining, and I hope you have a great day, and please hop on over and watch Lauren's video.